I must ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. That feeling you just had was part of you on the inside dying because you just had to go through that. You're welcome. This is for the regular class, not the advanced class, because if you're advanced, you don't want to listen to this. If you're regular, you don't want to listen to it either, but you're going to want to make your life easier from there. Let's see. This is Thursday, March 28th, last day before spring break. If you listen closely, you might hear kids break into tears as I rage and charge them a whole bunch of B points for being insane. Shoe drive is over. Tie game was spring break. Beach vacation. Today is the last day of the week, which is why I'm not wearing a tie today. For those of you who are having trouble picking up on that. The mythology test, you can turn it in all the way through the end of the year. The only difference is on April 16th, I'm going to delete it off my website. So if you've not downloaded it by then, you're going to be out of luck unless you come and like specially ask me, then I get to make fun of you and we get to bond and stuff like that. For those of you who are at home watching this one over spring break, 1, you're a loser. 2, let me help you out. Camp T questions. The biggest thing will be 1, Monday of Camp Tecumseh week. You don't need to be here until between 8 and 8:15. So get dropped off by a parent if you can. And then the rest of the questions from there, send me emails. I'll be happy to answer them, or reminds. I can help you out. But the biggest thing I wanted to make sure to let you know, that Monday, make sure you're here at school between 8 and 8:15. You don't have to ride the bus. And then that Wednesday when we get back, we'll be back by 2, and you don't have to wait till 2:45. When we're back at 2, we're done with you, and you can run away, and we're good to go. And that does not bother me at all. Then the rest of you who do not have your information yet, because turning in homework is really hard, see me at the end of class today, and I'm happy to give you at least your cabin and your bus. And then once again, if you get things taken care of, email me over break, and I can be nice to you to try and help you out. Outsidery time. Now back to stabbing kids. Let's see what we have. Our weirdly named main character is
Pony.
His weirdly named older brother is and then his normal named older brother is Oh, some of you guys did pay attention.
No, we didn't.
Some of you did paying attention.
Yeah.
We had Paul Newman. We covered that part. That was the car thing, and then Paul Newman's dead. He didn't get stabbed or anything fun. He just died of old age. I'm sorry. Oh no, they turned him into salad dressing. You can now get a taste of him today. No, that's what bothers you, whatever, you special children. We have the gang that he hangs out with. We're going to find out a bit more about them in a moment. Greasers, the gang that, not the gang, the group that keeps trying to beat them up. Socias or socks, the things you pull on over your feet. And we had our Soch doggy there. And we got to, who's in the Corvair that shows up? The Socias. What is it the Socias try to do with them?
Kill him. Cut his hair. Cut his hair.
They try to cut his hair. They're just not very good at hair cutting. That's what, like, we think your haircut begins below the chin. And he's like, no, you went way too low. And that's what we tried to talk him out of going with below the chin haircut. And we got to the empty lot where we found out apparently I was creeping on poor Loudon. And that's where, as he explained to me again this morning, he was like, there's houses there now. That's how an empty lot works. It's an empty lot until they build a house there, and then it's called a house. And so that was an empty lot that was still showing up on Google. In the book, that's where they hang out quite a bit, is in this empty lot. Who wears the madras? I wish.
The wish kids.
Socias, or kids who wear old Hollister, because Hollister was really popular. And then the cowlick. And I found out, I think this side of my head, I have a cowlick because apparently I kept trying to push my hair down and it was short because my horrible basketball players shaved my head. On this side, it still like clicks out to one side. So I tried like pushing it down and putting water on it and it went, it came back up again. So until it gets longer, I'm stuck with hair that keeps sticking out to the side. I did find the alfalfa picture to put that on there. After I talked about it to you guys yesterday,
I have a little one right here.
Yes, you do. It's adorable. And then we got, that was right where we had stopped, was Soda Pop cocking his eyebrow, where he could smell what the rock was cooking. Alright.
That Buzz Lightyear picture, though.
Made me smile, too. Alright, we're on page 9, but we get to the good stuff now. So, top of page 9, we'll start at the top of page 9.
It was good before?
No, I thought so, but some kids were whiners, you know.
Oh, I like it.
Derry stared at him for a second, then cracked a grin. Soda Pop isn't afraid of him like everyone else, and enjoys teasing him. Me? I'd just as soon tease a full-grown grizzly, but for some reason, Derry seems to like being teased by Soda. Our gang had chased the Socials to their car and heaved rocks at them. They came running toward us now. 4 lean, hard guys. They were all as tough as nails and looked it. I mean, I'd grown up with them, and they accepted me, even though I was younger, because I was dairy and soda's kid brother, and I kept my mouth shut good. Steve I think I have it on there. Hang on, do I have it? I do. Steve Randall was 17, tall, lean, thick, greasy hair. He kept combed in complicated swirls. He was cocky, smart, and soda's best buddy since grade school. Now, Steve's specialty was cars. He could lift a hubcap quicker and more quietly than anyone in the neighborhood. But he also knew cars upside down and backward, and he could drive anything on wheels. He and Soda worked at the same gas station. Steve part-time and Soda full-time. And their station got more customers than any other one in town. Whether that was because Steve was so good with cars or because Soda attracted girls like honey draws flies, I couldn't tell you. I liked Steve only because he was Soda's best friend. He didn't like me. He thought I was a tag-along and a kid. Soda always took me with him when they went places, if they weren't taking girls, and that bugged Steve. It wasn't my fault. Soda always asked me. I didn't ask him. Soda doesn't think I'm a kid. Now, a couple things with Steve. They mentioned that he lifts hubcaps. Probably not an activity that you're familiar with. One, do you even know what a hubcap is?
Yes, it covers the covers the wheel well.
It covers the little wheel well, something like that. So that was a hubcap. But one time before we had like spinners and rims, this is what you would do to make your car look nice. You go out and get these hubcaps. They're all big and metal and shiny. And you put them on the side, it'd make your car stand out. Well, it was a hobby you could have, or a job. If you were a crook, you would go around and steal the hubcaps. You took a screwdriver and you had to pop it into the side. It would pop out, and then you would just lift them up. Literally, lift up the hubcap, put it on your arm, and then run away giggling. Giggle, giggle, giggle. And then you'd run and find someone to then sell them to. You'd have like, a trench coat with a bunch of hubcaps on the inside. Like, want to buy a hubcap? And you could make all kinds of fat cash. Nowadays, they're not that fancy. This is one that I found running with my cross-country kids, and it's just a plastic one. They cost all of like $0.25 from Walmart. So if those of you who are planning on having a job over spring break and stealing hubcaps, you're not going to make fat cash now. One, most people don't have them. Most people just have rims, which are built in, and they're a lot harder to lift because it's a whole tire. You have to really commit to it. Two, the actual hubcaps are just plastic. But at one time, they were metal and fancy, and you could sell them and make money. Nowadays, not so much. Plus, Steve doesn't like him because he's his best friend's younger brother, and no one likes younger brothers. They're the worst. I know, because
I like my younger brother.
I mean, they're good because you can sell them, but that's about it.
What?
Just saying who's paying attention. 2-Bit back up again.
Yeah, no, you're right, you did.
2-Bit Matthews was the oldest of the gang and the wisecracker of the bunch. He was about 6 feet tall, stocky in build, and very proud of his long, rusty-colored sideburns. He had gray eyes and a wide grin, and he couldn't stop making funny remarks to save his life. You couldn't shut up that guy. He always had to get his 2 bits worth in, hence his name. Even his teachers forgot his real name was Keith, and we hardly remembered he had one. Life was one big joke to 2-Bit. He was famous for shoplifting and his black-handled switchblade, which he couldn't have acquired without his first talent. And he was always smarting off to the cops. He really couldn't help it. Everything he said was so irresistibly funny that he just had to let the police in on it to brighten up their dull lives. That's the way he explained it to me. He liked fights, blondes, and for some unfathomable reason, school. He was still a junior at 18 and a half, and he never learned anything. He just went for the kicks. I liked him real well because he kept us laughing at ourselves, as well as at other things. He reminded me of Will Rogers. I don't know, maybe it was the grin. With 2-Bit, a couple of things. One, they talk about him shoplifting. Once again, not an activity you should get into because Ponyboy makes poor choices along with his friends. You know what shoplifting is?
You take stuff
from a store that doesn't belong to you. You go to a shop and then you lift things and put it into your pocket and then walk out. Isn't that stealing? Yes, that's exactly stealing. Not a thing that you should be doing. And they also mentioned the fact that he was like Will Rogers, is a comedian from way back in the day. He pretended he was a cowboy and did stand-up and stuff like that, but he was known for being hilarious back in the day. Sort of the John Mulaney of his time, for those of you who know John Mulaney. If you don't know John Mulaney, you should Google him or use Netflix over the weekend, because he's hilarious. The other thing, I guess you have all break, don't you? Look at you watch all 4 of his episodes. The other thing that they talk about is a switchblade, because that's going to pop up a lot in the book. You guys know what a switchblade is?
Yeah.
Knife.
Type of knife.
It's a special kind of knife. I brought one for you.
Oh, God.
Thank you.
Proud at me.
So the way it... So... No.
I was like, he went
Oh my God.
I would never stab a child. And so the way it works with the switchblade, it has a... normally they're not fake, so you can actually stab a person. But it has a little button on the side of it. And when you have that special someone that you feel needs stabbing, you hit the button, blade comes out, you go over, give them a little pokey. And then once they have enough holes in them, and you go ahead and stop charging the kid points, which is why you can't keep trying to loan people food, because now I have to charge both of you. Hang on 1 second.
Wait, me?
No, one kid's now down to 5 points. I get to move a seat. Yeah. And then the other kid who shouldn't have given one in the first place, because that's why they keep coming back to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Glad I could get involved. If only I had a real...
I never use a real
one. And so the way it works with the switchblade is once you've done the stabby, you then hit a little button. Whink, it goes right back in. The drawback is a couple things. One, they're illegal now because for some reason the police don't want you having a knife that you can quickly stab people with. You know how those police are. 2, the other reason was boys tended to get hurt with them because boys are what we call idiots. And what they would do is keep them in their front pockets, and then they would horse around, and you kick your friend, and you hit it in the pocket, and it hits the release button, and it would stab bits of them. So because of that, the straight out and up one becomes an issue. So they changed it, and there's a different kind, which is called a rainbow blade. And the way the rainbow blade works, as opposed to going straight out, it comes around like that.
I own one. It's a butterfly knife.
See? Told you. Kind of. This one's just a straight up. And then, see, I can try to comb down my...
Bro, you have that.
I own one of those.
The idea of the rainbow blade is as opposed to it shooting straight out the end, because it comes around in a little rainbow, and when you keep it in your pocket and your friend kicks you, it doesn't shoot through your leg. Instead, it gets snagged, and then you don't get stabbed as much, which makes things better. Then to go to the other one, since you were bringing it up, because I have a whole collection of knives, is what's called a butterfly knife. The butterfly knife is not spring-loaded at all. This is the one that you see in the movies where they flip it around like that, and then you stab a person and flip it back around like that. This one's okay. Amazon, it was only $3 because it's fake. There's no hurting yourself on that one. That way you can practice with it, and then when you get your real butterfly knife, you can shank a fool, and you'll be good to go, and you don't embarrass yourself. Because the last thing you want to do is when you're mugging somebody, you're like, ow, my hand! And you drop it while they go running away. So you get the fake one to practice first, then you're good at your stabbing. You know, like that one kid they keep charging points to. You got to make sure you get really good at flipping it around to the extra stabbing of them. Anyway, enough stabbing children, as much fun as that is. But if I had to pick the real... Wait, I have the next one. There we go. But if I had to pick the real... By the way, told you I was going to stab a kid. You thought I was lying.
Can you stab me?
Maybe later. I can stab more than one kid. Yay. If I had to pick the real character of the game, it would be Dallas Winston. Dally. I used to like to draw his picture when he was in a dangerous mood. For then I could get his personality down in just a few lines. He had an elfish face with high cheekbones and a pointed chin. Small, sharp animal teeth, and ears like a lynx. His hair was almost white. It was so blonde. And he didn't like haircuts or hair oil either. So it fell over his forehead in wisps and kicked out in the back in tufts and curled behind his ears and along the nape of his neck. His eyes were blue, blazing ice, cold with a hatred of the whole world. Dally had spent 3 years on the wild side of New York. He'd been arrested at the age of 10. He was tougher than the rest of us. Tougher, colder, meaner. The shade of difference that separates a greaser from a hood, that wasn't present in Dally. He was as wild as the boys in the downtown outfits, like Tim Shepard's gang. In New York, Dally blew off steam in gang fights. But here, organized gangs are rarities. They're just small bunches of friends who stick together. The warfare is between the social classes. A rumble, when it's called, is usually born of a grudge fight, and the opponents just happen to bring their friends along. I mean, there are a few named gangs around, like the River Kings, the Tiber Street Tigers, but here in the Southwest, there's no gang rivalry. So Dally, even though he could get into a good fight sometimes, had no specific thing to hate, no rival gang. Only socias. And you can't win against them, no matter how hard you try, because they've got all the breaks, and even whipping them isn't going to change that fact. Maybe that's why Dallas was so bitter. I mean, he had quite a reputation. They have a file on him down at the police station. He'd been arrested, he got drunk, rode in rodeos, lied, cheated, stole, rolled drunks, jumped small kids. He did everything. I didn't like him, but he was smart, and you had to respect him. With Dally, Dally's scary. Another quick timeout on that one. A couple of things they mention that Dally does. One, they say that he rolls drunks. Another activity that I hope you don't do. Rolling, you guys know what mugging somebody is?
Yeah.
Rolling a drunk is like mugging somebody. But instead of like going up to them and pulling a gun, you go to a party and you wait until someone gets really drunk and they pass out onto the ground. Then you walk up to them and you go, and you roll them over, pull out their wallet, take the money, throw the wallet down and go, thank you, and then you run away. That's called rolling a drunk. That's what Dally does to get his money. He goes to parties and robs people when they pass out. The other thing he does is jumping small kids. He doesn't do that for money. He does that because he's a horrible person. Jumping somebody is not the same thing as getting into a fight. When you jump somebody, it's when you and a bunch of friends hide, wait till someone walks by, jump out, they turn and go, ah! You push them to the ground, and they're on the ground. You just start kicking them, and they start curling into a ball until they start screaming, and you jump on top of them and then run away. Mr. Brovicast, that's awful. It is. And on top of that, not only are you outnumbering them and surprising them, who is it that Dally likes to jump?
Kids.
Small children. Because once again, he's a horrible human. To help you remember it, because it gets tricky, because you have a Dally and you have a Dairy, and the names sound really similar, here's the hint I have for you. Dally is a loser. Loser has an L. Dally is a double loser. Dairy is a brother. Brother has an R. 2 R's, 2 R's. So as you get through it, between the Dally and the Dairy, L for loser, R for brother. Because it'll get confusing because both of them do things in the book. You got Dally, scary. Johnny Cade was last and least. Now, if you can picture a little dark puppy that's been kicked too many times and is lost in a crowd of strangers, you'll have Johnny. He was the youngest next to me. Smaller than the rest with a slight build. He had big black eyes and a dark tanned face. His hair was jet black, heavily greased and combed to the side. But it was so long, it fell in shaggy bangs across his forehead. He had a nervous, suspicious look in his eyes, and that beating he got from the socias didn't help matters. He was the gang's... Hiccup. No, he wasn't. He was the gang's pet, like everyone's kid brother. His father was always beating him up, and his mother ignored him, except when she was hacked off at something. And then you could hear her yelling at him clear down at our house. I think he hated that worse than getting whipped. He would have run away 1,000,000 times if we hadn't been there. If it hadn't been for the gang, Johnny would never have known what love and affection are. I wiped my eyes hurriedly. Did you catch him? No, they got away this time, the dirty... Two-Bit went on to cheerfully calling the socias every name he could think of, or just make up. Hey, the kid's okay? I'm okay. I tried to think of something to say. I'm usually pretty quiet around people, even the gang. I changed the subject. I didn't know you were out of the cooler yet, Dally. Good behavior. Got off early. That's slang. Do you guys know what a cooler is? Yeah, it's the thing over there that has water in it. It is, but that's not what they're referring. He wasn't hiding in a small thing with water. It stands for what? Yeah, jail. So the cooler is when you go and have to go cool off, so they put you in jail. So he'd been in jail, but then got out for good behavior, which is ironic because Dally doesn't do good behavior. Dallas lit a cigarette, handed it to Johnny. Everyone sat down to have a smoke and relax. A smoke always lessens the tension. I mean, you guys know that. I quit trembling and my color was back. The cigarette was calming me down. Two-Bit cocked an eyebrow. That's a nice looking bruise you got there, kid. I touched my cheek gingerly. Really? Two-Bit nodded sagely. It's a nice cut, too. It makes you look tough. Tough and tough are two different words. Tough is the same as rough, but tough means like cool, sharp, like a tough-looking Mustang or a tough record. In our neighborhood, both are compliments. Steve flicked his ashes at me. What were you doing walking by your lonesome? Leave it to good old Steve to bring up something like that. I don't know, I was coming home from the movies. I didn't think... Well, you don't ever think, Derry broke in. Not at home or anywhere when it counts. You must think at school with all those good grades you bring home, and you've always got your nose in a book. Did you ever use your head for common sense? No sirree, bub. And if you did have to go by yourself, you should have carried a blade. I just stared at the hole in the toe of my tennis shoe. Me and Derry just didn't dig each other. I never could please him. He would have hollered at me for carrying a blade if I had carried one. If I'd brought home B's, he wanted A's. If I got A's, he wanted to make sure they stayed A's. If I was playing football, I should be in studying. If I was reading, I should be out playing football. He never hollered at Soda Pop, not even when Soda dropped out of school or got tickets for speeding or fell asleep in class. He just hollered at me. Soda was glaring at him. Leave my kid brother alone, you hear? It ain't his fault he likes to go to the movies. It ain't his fault the socials like to jump us. If he had been carrying a blade, it would have been a good excuse to cut him to ribbons. Derry always takes up for me. Derry said impatiently, when I want my kid brother to tell me what to do with my other kid brother, I'll ask you, kid brother. But he laid off me. He always does when Soda Pop tells him to, most of the time. Go ahead and circle the top 13 so we know where we stopped. The only homework I'm going to give you is we're going to start reading together. It won't be until page 19. So it'll be about 6 pages to read between now and the Wednesday you guys get back from break. Or not, and then just come back and be confused. But we're going to start on that page when we get back.